I think it tells you much more than I could say in an hour. The way we communicate has fundamentally changed forever. The devices we use, the networks we share on, and the different technologies we use to actually talk to each other and actually live our lives. The last time this happened, in fact, not the last time this happened, but one of the most profound times this happened was when telephones were invented. So people would meet up, talk down the pub, face to face, and then suddenly people were having telephones in their house. It became not just something that rich people had, but something that everybody had. And this was genuinely disruptive. I promise it really was quite different when it happened. And people were calling each other up. And businesses were thinking, this doesn't really affect us. This is things that happen to society, to our customers. We don't need to do anything about this. And actually some businesses said, maybe we should. Maybe this is a change we should be a part of. And it was a big risk. It's a big investment. It's quite scary. Opening up your company doors so that crazy members of the public can call you up and demand a better service is kind of horrible. It's the last thing you want. And investing in something like this, a huge switchboard for your customer service team, was risky. It's expensive. But of course, we know how that played out. And businesses have phones on every single desk. Every single member of staff has access to a phone, and it's a normal part of doing business now. And of course, the ones that did it first were the ones that survived. Ignore those. I think where you see it kind of most fundamental changes with businesses that are technology first and businesses that aren't are these two companies. So this is Amazon on one side and Walmart on the other side. Essentially, these businesses are the same. They buy something that someone else makes and they sell it to the public, ideally for cheaper. Now, when I go into a supermarket, a Walmart, it's called Asda in the UK, I'm not sure what it's called here, I see this. Gherkins. I hate gherkins. You walk in and look, what a great deal. It used to be $2.98, now it's $3.98. So extra expensive gherkins for everyone. It's a terrible deal. But that's because they don't know the customers. They don't know who is entering the building. They don't know anything about them other than the fact that they might want expensive gherkins. Amazon, of course, can do something much more interesting. They know what I buy, when I buy it, roughly how much I spend, how I search for it, where I get it delivered. And of course, that means they can serve me things that it knows I'm interested in. So we have a table tennis table in our office, which of course all tech companies do. We're a walking stereotype, cliche. And I'm looking for watches, that kind of thing. And this is much more effective. And of course, I spend much more money through Amazon. So, with a change in society, with a change in technology, there has been this horrible, horrible minefield. I hate this image, but I think it tells a big story, which is, look how much technology has been developed to help brands adjust to these changes. And you can see us, this tiny, like 4 pixels squeezed into the middle there. And I can't even tell you what 90% of those companies do. But I can tell you what role we play in it. And I can tell you what brands are doing with social data in regards to all this. So there's email, there's mobile, there's a million things, but I've only got 20 minutes. So I'm going to talk about the social data part of it. So I think really it's about businesses seeing social data as not something that the social media team do, but something that the whole company can benefit from. So Andrea Cook puts it quite nicely when she says successful social businesses require more than a Facebook page and a community manager. It requires a new model with an integrated approach across all functions of the company. This is kind of similar to the graph you presented right at the start, and it's which team, this is Forrester research, which departments in a company actually have a dedicated member of staff for social media. And you can see it's increasing. So 13 departments in US brands have quite commonly have social media staff. It's not just social marketing, it's not just marketing departments, it's not just PR. It's teams like legal teams and IT teams and the executive teams making use of social data. And I'll give you some examples of how. So we have these basic use cases. I think this is what everybody associates social listening or social intelligence with. It's stuff like customer care. So you might have seen KLM, their Twitter page. It's really cool. They change it every 5 minutes to tell you how long you can expect to wait to hear a response to your Twitter question. And the changing expectations that you mentioned, that's exactly what brands are doing. They are changing in line with how society expects to communicate with the brand. PR and crisis communications, this is all about that unknown unknowns, the Donald Rumsfeld thing. What happens when someone starts talking about your product in a horrible way? We have a client in the US that had a shooting outside their store, and head office actually detected the patterns using social data before the security team in the store had called up. So there's a level of intelligence that's happening that's faster than traditional and old business can ever keep up with. And you all know about reputation management, influencer marketing, community management, brand tracking. The point here is that there's only a couple of departments. If you're doing this stuff, it's probably PR, maybe marketing, maybe customer service, but it's not spread throughout the organization. It's still one or two people, one or two teams, and it's simple. Then we get maturing use cases. So I know we have quite a few brands in the room, so you might start thinking, checking things off. Oh, we do that. We don't do that. So consumer insights. We work with a clothes brand, and they don't just listen to every time someone mentions the clothes brand, not just like Amazon, who know everything about their customers when they're on the Amazon site, but actually, who are they as people? What do they do the other 99% of the time when they're not talking about your brand? What do I do the 99% of the time when I'm not on Amazon's website? Who am I as a person? And that's when you can start doing the really creepy pizza ordering stuff in the video that we just saw, but in a nice way, of course. Competitor intelligence, product development. If you're building an iPhone and everybody's complaining about the battery life, but they love the screen size, on the next iteration, you might work much more on developing the product to be something that you know your customers like and avoiding the stuff that your customers hate. And then we have these pioneering use cases. So these are the things that are kind of experimental, that even we don't really know what people are doing with this stuff. So financial performance. We have a holiday company that we work with, a travel company, and they're doing work to try and tie what people are saying about them online with their share price and their stock performance. Now, I don't believe it can fully work with just social media data to share price, but there's something in it. The idea that the perception of a brand can shape the value of a brand. Logistics and stock. Think about location data and where people are when they're talking. Maybe one store doesn't have enough prawns and another, there's a crash on a motorway, which means staff can't get to work. Understanding the logistics and stock can actually be made more intelligent through social data. Even have security and threat monitoring, so people using your brand's copyright theft, or people planning fraud or cyber terrorism. There's all sorts of really fascinating but complicated ways that you can use social data. And when we get to this stage, we're talking about 5 departments, 10 departments in the company that all really want this social data. They might not think that it's going to change their entire business, but they can do their job slightly better. They can make better decisions. They get slightly more knowledge than they would if they didn't have social data. So you can kind of plot them like this. So I mean, this isn't perfect, but you can plot the simple one. So the y-axis is how complicated it is to do, and the x-axis is how sophisticated you are as an organization. You could kind of call it digital transformation, where traditional businesses are all the way over to the left, and fully transformed, fully enlightened businesses are all the way on the right. And if you think about that telephone analogy again, I think at some point, everybody in a business will treat social media as just a normal part of doing your job. And digital technologies won't be this alien, change, scary thing. They'll just be normal, just the same way email is, for example. So really, it's about the future is already here. We already have all these technologies. We can already do all of these things. It's just not evenly distributed. So we have some brands that get this stuff and realize they've got to innovate and start investing and taking risks, and other brands that kind of stand still and they don't know what to do. It's scary. I don't want to buy a call center. I don't want my customers to call me. The problem is those are the ones that do get left behind. So over half of executives, I think this was similar in your presentation, but I can't speak Spanish, so I have no idea. Over half of executives think that this is important to their companies today, but even more importantly, nearly all of them think it's important in 3 years. So I think the knowledge, the theory, the kind of understanding that this is important is starting to happen. The actual practical part is the difficult bit. So again, we saw some data on this earlier, but this is how quickly businesses are managing to transform to the idea of digital technologies and social data in particular. So you can see at the top, IT companies, telecoms companies, media companies, the kind of companies that have to engage with tech as a normal part of their job are doing it much, much quicker than traditional businesses like oil and education. And I'm actually surprised that this data said financial services was quite high. And I can't quite work out why that might be. Maybe it's just the direct contact with customers, or just the need to innovate, or the idea that we want more from financial service providers. But generally, I would say it's the risk-averse businesses down the bottom that are slower to adjust. Does anyone know this model? This is Altimeter. It's an American research house. And this is how they talk about how you structure your business. So all the way on the left, you have maybe 2 or 3 champions. Maybe those people are in this room. And you're the person saying, we need to do this, we need to transform, we need social data, we need digital technologies. But no one really listens, and you're not connected, and you're not given much budget or headcount. Then you slowly move up, you get given a budget, you get given some hires, and you have a social media department or an insights department. Then you might have a center of excellence, and this is where you're starting to get really sophisticated. Maybe some executive buy-in, the board believe what you're doing, and you can establish some good practices and processes and distribute to the teams that need them. So you can send customer service their report, you can send the legal team theirs, the PR team theirs. Eventually, each team might even have its own center of excellence that develops its own processes, its own technologies that it wants to use. And eventually, no one's here yet. It says under 5%, but that's just 0, I reckon, which is businesses that just treat social media as just a normal thing that they can use. And I don't mean tweeting from every department. I mean using social data in a way that changes their business. So how do you get there? It's really hard. It's really hard. I work for a technology company, and we're not there. And this is where, Territorio step in, because it's people, it's process, it's personnel, it's culture, it's leadership. It's a lot of things that take a company, especially if your company is 100, 200 years old, and suddenly you have to do all this, this bullshit technology iPhone app things. And it's really hard, but we can be a part of it. I mean, we're the technology bit, and I think there's something to be said for the visible, the physical world. Just seeing that kind of hologram on stage had a bigger impact than if I'd seen it on a TV. And I think that's because there's something about taking something out of inboxes, taking something out of logins, taking something out of platforms and emails and PDFs, and putting it in the real world. So this is Heineken in London. And when you walk into the office, you actually see what customers are saying about Heineken, unedited. And you can even walk in and say, oh my God, Heineken's the most disgusting drink I've ever tasted in my life, and it will show up on the screen. And of course it's not, I quite like it, but the idea that it's a window into what your customers are saying is actually quite a powerful one. So here's one from Monster, which is a jobs company in the US, and the marketing team sit in front of this, and they do their normal job. Maybe it's got nothing to do with social data. But as they're doing their job, they're seeing what people think of their content. They're seeing what people think of the brand in general. They even have stuff set up where they're listening to people who are looking for a job. This is a recruitment company. And if they see people who are looking for a job, they can say, hey, why don't we get in touch with this guy? Why don't we send this guy a link to whatever his career is in his local area? And this, it's not the biggest change in the world, but it does change how people do their jobs. Here's MoneyGram, so even a financial services company, looking at social data and thinking, there's something we can do here. You put it in front of your customer service team, okay, they're going to respond to people on Twitter, on Facebook, on email. But suddenly if a super influential person, if Barack Obama starts talking about you, you push them straight to the top of the line. And you can start to see the reaction of people. When you've responded, what's the reaction? What's the difference I'm making in my job in a company that affects the customers? And that's never really been seen before. Here's an American bank. These guys, I can't say who they are annoyingly, but these guys put it not only in front of their staff who are working, but they've got one in their CEO's office. They've got one outside the whole C-suites of offices. And that's not so that the CEO spends every day looking at the screen, by the way, 5 minutes. It's not so that the CEO looks at the screen all day, but he's having a meeting, he's making decisions, maybe reading a report, or she. And if you're putting the customer's voice inside that room, it's going to have a very subtle effect. This is what people think of my company. Suddenly the CEO is engaging with things that are quite detailed and quite almost irrelevant sometimes, that would just never reach the top level of the company until now. And I think that's how it makes a change. And next time the CEO is talking to the marketing team, or the social media department, or the insights department, they're coming in equipped with the knowledge that this is what people are saying. I've seen the data. I might not know all the details, but I'm familiar with this. I think IKEA here today, this is in the Netherlands office. It's just a guy who's lost in data. There's almost too much data on that one. But brands like IKEA, there's another one, Marks and Spencer's. It's a UK retailer. They have it in their cafeteria. So all their staff sitting, eating lunch, just listening, looking, and like having a look at what people are saying about the company. I think it's just quite a refreshing way of getting people, no matter what their job, just to kind of be comfortable with social data and comfortable with digital technologies. Does everyone know the Oreo story? It's kind of well-worn ground. I'll tell it anyway. But in the Super Bowl in 2013, the lights went out, and it's about $3.5 million for 30 seconds of advertising in the Super Bowl. So you want to make sure every single one of those dollars is well spent. So what Oreo managed to do, within a minute of the lights going out, they'd actually tweeted out something that said something like, you can always dunk in the dark. Not the most amazing or creative piece of copy. But the idea that they did this within a minute or 2 minutes was ridiculous. If you work at brands, you know how long it can take to get a piece of copy approved. It takes 6 weeks to be signed off, to be sent to this person, to look at this person. And they were doing it in 2 minutes. And I think that is a testament to how businesses really are taking digital seriously and moving at the same speed as their customers. So we worked with Jaguar. They did the same thing the year after. They didn't have an Oreo moment. But what was happening is, as their ad was airing on TV, they were adjusting and listening to what people were saying and pushing out different pieces of content and responding. And they had all the decision makers from all different departments in the same room looking at this stuff. So it's a very complicated journey to get from a very old-fashioned business, a Walmart maybe 10 years ago, all the way to something that lives and breathes digital technologies, uses social data in 10, 15 different departments. And it's going to take a lot of us to get there, and I think agencies will pave the way of best practice. And technology is almost the background bit that facilitates the whole thing. So those were just my thoughts on the role social data plays in digital transformation.